Hello you absolute legends. Doom has always been a very violent game. When it was released in 1993, it took things to the next level, exposing the video gaming world to a degree of pure carnage never before seen. But Doom was never just about killing. If you play through the original game, you explore well-designed levels with a creepy, ominous atmosphere, and you are provided a well-paced experience that is both fun and intense, never allowing a person to fully relax. But over the years, map makers slowly started to experiment with a certain type of map, a map that would focus on one particular aspect of Doom, the ability to inflict as much death as possible. The premise is simple. You are provided with ample health, a huge arsenal of weapons and ammo, and an ungodly supply of demons to kill. These maps are even given a special name: Slaughter Maps. Slaughter maps aren't usually made for the most casual of Doom players. They throw you into enormous battles against huge armies of demons that require an enormous amount of experience and knowledge to navigate successfully. Here, the player needs to understand how to control enemies on a mass scale, a skill that you simply never develop by playing the base game. Generally, players aren't expected to even survive at all, let alone perform well. The normal way of playing through these types of insane maps is to survive for as long as you can before saving. And then, after repeatedly dying, you can progress just enough to save again. And one map was particularly infamous for its difficulty, a map released in 2012 by the player Okuplok. When released, it was possibly the biggest map ever made in terms of the amount of enemies. It contains 23,000 demons, which is more than the amount of demons in every single official Doom map combined. And for all intents and purposes, Okuplok's map was considered impossible to beat. Still, for those who enjoy exposing themselves to mass levels of pain, this map was considered a fun challenge to get through abusing saves. And ultimately, its reputation became that of a map that was just so brutal and so unforgiving that it was almost comical. I can't stress enough that Okuplok's map wasn't made to be beaten. It was made to punish you. But as we all know, as soon as something gets the reputation as unbeatable, that's when the fires of determination truly ignite. And after years of theory crafting and hard work, in April of 2025, the legend known as Coincident became the first player in history to beat Okuplok's map on Ultraviolence without dying a single time. In today's video, we will take a look at what is almost certainly the most difficult map in Doom history to have ever been beaten. I really hope you enjoy. Guys, check out this card. No, I have not started making my own cards. I got this from the legends over at Revolut. Revolut is a money app that is specifically designed to simplify your money. Revolut is used by over 50 million people worldwide. Setting up an account is very simple, taking just a few minutes, and if you download Revolut using the link in the description or QR code on screen, you'll get $40 after your first purchase. You can get loads of spending features inside the app. For example, maybe you're buying something online and you're worried about your card details being reused or stolen. Not a problem, just instantly generate a single-use card that stops working after one purchase. And if your physical card gets lost or stolen, you can freeze it in seconds with the app and generate a virtual card to use while you wait for your new card to arrive. Revolut also has a range of handy travel perks for spending abroad, offering competitive exchange rates for over 30 currencies with very low foreign transaction fees. And you can easily purchase and use eSIMs to get coverage in over 100 countries. Revolut also helps manage your cash flow with tons of tools that make budgeting so easy. Revolut also lets you customize your card, which is why mine says Absolute Legend, and mine is even a stylish, high-quality stainless steel metal card because I'm on the metal plan. Don't forget, you can get $40 when you download Revolut and use your card for the first time. Head to the link in the description or QR code on screen to learn more. It is argued that the genesis for the idea of the Slaughter map was the second secret level of the Plutonia experiment, an official Doom episode that was part of Final Doom, released in 1996. Map 32, called Go To It, is a remodeled version of Doom's first level entryway, but this time it is chock full of the most dangerous demons Doom has to offer. It was obvious. The idea wasn't to design an interesting and immersive level, but rather to produce pure chaos. As the years went on, Slaughter maps became progressively more and more insane, culminating in the map Holy Hell, created by the player JK and released in 2006. Containing almost 20,000 demons, Holy Hell is ridiculous. Huge arenas are packed with as many enemies as can possibly fit, and you can see how this is now no ordinary Doom map. As a casual observer, it doesn't even seem possible to survive. But when you watch a good player attempt a map like this, you can see that with the right type of knowledge of how demons behave, it doesn't really matter how many there are. Monster behavior is predictable, even in huge numbers such as this. So with enough experience, you can become almost unkillable. Ultimately, what becomes the biggest concern is not necessarily how to survive, but rather how exactly you're going to kill everything. Luckily, slaughter maps usually provide the player with a good supply of health, weapons, and ammo. Needing to worry about ammo kind of spoils the fun of a good slaughter map. Players want to unleash hell, not do math trying to count monsters and conserve ammo. 6 years after its release, the player Okuplok released the first UV Max demo for Holy Hell. UV Max being the category for killing every monster and finding every secret on the ultra-violence difficulty. And as per competitive Doom rules, in order for a demo to be accepted, you are not allowed to die, which means that Okuplok had to kill all 20,000 monsters on ultra-violence without dying a single time. A feat that would take him almost 3 hours. However, I must point out that if you go to Okuplok's demo page on DSD Archive, there is a question mark next to each demo, with a little message saying, "Dubious demo, player history of cheating." Okuplok loved slaughter maps, and in 2009 he would join Doom World and begin posting demos and videos of his play. And his play was amazing. He would effortlessly navigate the most difficult of levels, and due to his amazing performances, he received incredible praise. This shit is insane, ridiculous, inhuman. Oku is made of God and impossible. The way you sail through this is just godlike. You barely even get hit. It doesn't even look challenging to you. I am truly awestruck. I gotta agree, these are just so smooth and clean, more than impressive. But when Okuplok uploaded an 8-minute run of Map 8 of Speed of Doom, things took a turn. Okuplok did the entire map, taking damage only a single time. And that single time was an intentional jump using an Archvile blast to gain distance. His video, which he posted to YouTube, was unbelievable. And it's interesting that while he did have a habit of posting demos, for this particular run, he didn't. He only shared a YouTube video, which is definitely of note because you can learn a lot about a run by studying the demo. And posting only a video to the community isn't really what Doom players normally do. Several days after posting his run, the user Vince DSS would be the first to raise his suspicions, saying, "I found Okuplok demos here and on YouTube pretty fishy. He barely takes any damage and looks way too easy. Even godlike players like Anders, Vile, or Gusta don't come out of fights totally unhurt." And he posted Okuplok's hitless run, saying it was a good example of possibly being too perfect. Du would say, "I have to say, I also WTF'd over that video. Not a single hit taken in the middle of such a huge and chaotic battle seems very, very improbable." Though Okuplok did have his defenders, with Bloodite Crypto saying, "It's certainly no surprise to feel such boiling envy when viewing Oku's ability. These allegations of cheating are certainly hilarious. I've heard language like that before. It couldn't be." Let's check out Bloodite Crypto's last post. The man, the myth, the legend who uttered the immortal words, "You humor me greatly with your arrogance and contempt," and then disappeared off the face of the earth after Zero Master accused him of cheating, came to Okuplok's defense. And it's not surprising, the two were friends. However, just being friends with one of the most meme-worthy cheaters of all time isn't evidence that you are also a cheater, so we can't hold this against Okuplok. However, the very same day that these suspicions were raised, Okuplok deleted his entire YouTube channel and disappeared. Vince DSS probably said it best by saying, "Removing all the vids is a bit strange indeed. Feels a bit like taking the evidence away." And I'd say Okuplok's actions definitely didn't help his case. Several months later, Okuplok did return, and his explanation wasn't very convincing. He claimed that he didn't know how to TAS, except for the fact that he does know how to TAS. And he assured everyone that he has never used any of those tools, except for that one time where he did and admitted to it after being called out. And he claimed that he only uploaded videos for entertainment and didn't make them to gain respect, except for when a couple of people didn't give him respect, so he removed all of his videos. While there was never any concrete proof that Okuplok cheated, because he never provided demo files for his most insane runs, it is very likely that he did use tools. And that's why his demos now all have that little message saying he has a history of cheating. I find it fascinating that despite most people accepting that he did use tools, he didn't outright leave the community, and the community didn't outright shun him. Okuplok would stick around, and eventually, as I talked about earlier, would release a full UV Max demo of Holy Hell in October 2012. More than 2 years after he was first accused of cheating. Regardless of whether or not Okuplok used tools, what's certain is that he had a lot of experience and knowledge about slaughter maps. Even tassing them requires you to understand enemy behavior very well, and Okuplok had spent years playing the most difficult maps. So when Okuplok decided to create the biggest slaughter map of all time, this wasn't some random player doing it on a whim. This was an expert, cheater or not, and what Okuplok created would go down in history as one of the most infamous slaughter maps ever. Okuplok would post his map to the Doomworld forum in November 2012. It was a map simply called Untitled 2, though these days players generally refer to the map as Okuplok Slaughter Map, or just Okuplok after its creator. 2 months after it was posted, Okuplok would disappear again, this time forever. And according to his post, the map is only 3/4 complete. It begins with some platforming, followed by a gauntlet of imps. An army of mancubi surrounds the arena, lining the cliffs in all directions. The sky immediately becomes densely packed with rockets and fireballs. It looks like hell in every sense of the word. Playing the level myself, I can't even get through the first fight alive. Mind you, this is even after I've seen it done and know what I should be doing. It honestly feels impossible. Even when I think I'm doing well, the waves of imps just never stop, and I always end up getting overwhelmed. And it doesn't help that the design of the level forces you to stop halfway through your climb. When you reach halfway up the cliff, you encounter archviles that will kill you if you continue ahead. But remaining in place seems like a death sentence. I don't know what kind of madness would drive someone to play this map for fun. I couldn't survive for a single minute, let alone even humor the possibility of surviving multiple hours. Okuplok is far more challenging than your typical slaughter map, but it's also brilliant. The battle arenas do have some kind of logic to them. They each present a puzzle that almost appears to have a set solution. The terrain seems to be built around enemy mechanics, and if you understand enemy behavior, you can use it to your advantage. At first glance, this level just looks like a joke. Surely anyone could make a similar map if only they just create some generic architecture and fill it to the brim with as many enemies as they can. But that's just not how Okuplok was made. There is definitely a method to this madness, and it's one of the reasons it has always intrigued players and has stood the test of time. Another thing that makes Okuplok particularly difficult is the scarcity of health, which is not typical of slaughter maps of this size. Normally slaughter maps have ample health, and generally only require you to survive one battle before replenishing your health completely. That's not the case here. Okuplok sometimes requires the player to survive multiple fights without giving you any health. Okuplok is also extremely restrictive on ammo, which forces the player to rely heavily on monster infighting. It's this combination of low health and ammo that truly ramps up the difficulty of Okuplok and makes it one of the most challenging maps ever made. But it wasn't so hard that people couldn't play the map and at least make it to the end using saves. And saving often is how people played this map. It became similar to a game like I Want to Be the Boshi, where you fully expect to die many times, but that doesn't really matter, and it just becomes a part of the experience. Over the years, several people had played through the map in this fashion, and it would often take them many hours to complete. The first person to really take the idea of beating Okuplok with the least amount of saves as possible was the player Blue Skull, who, in 2019, uploaded a run to YouTube which used a total of 44 saves. And I need to point out that 44 saves doesn't mean 44 deaths. For all we know, there were many deaths between each save. All this tells us is that 44 checkpoints were used, which is quite a lot when you consider that this player was really trying to minimize the amount of saves used. Aside from being difficult, Okuplok is also huge. In 2020, the player Loveless did a speedrun of the stage without monsters, and it would take him over half an hour to reach the end. Okuplok was always considered impossible to beat in a single sitting, but in 2023, things slowly began to change after the player Coincident began to play the level. Coincident was drawn to the level precisely because it had the reputation as being impossible, though he realized after only a couple of weeks of play that this reputation might not be as deserving as previously thought. Coincident found that with the right strategy, many of the fights were possible to beat most of the time without saving. he realized that each fight could be solved, and ultimately it only came down to a matter of technique. All that he needed to do was figure out the correct strategy that would enable him to survive. In March of 2023, Coincident began uploading videos to YouTube describing the strategies he had developed for each fight, a series I highly recommend you go and watch after this video, because it's otherwise impossible to truly understand the amount of thought that goes into each encounter to make them consistently survivable. Within a couple of months, Coincident had developed consistent strategies for every single fight, except for one. Because there was one particular fight that no matter what Coincident did, he simply could not survive with any consistency. He calls the fight the Revenant Snake. The room is a long winding corridor with space on each side. When the battle is triggered, an army of revenants fills the space, and a cyber demon appears at each end of the corridor. The ends of the corridor are also closed, trapping the player within. The idea is to have the player run back and forth, dodging the Revenant rockets and dealing as much damage as possible while trying to stay alive. The problem is that there are simply too many Revenants firing rockets to be able to navigate the corridor for any length of time without taking severe damage. Revenant rockets are usually quite easy to avoid if you have plenty of space, but in this case, the configuration of the hallway makes any standard movement pattern impossible. Coincident could only survive the fight less than 1 in 50 tries, which is completely unacceptable, especially because this fight appears almost 4 hours into a run. So Coincident needed to come up with a solution. Though luckily for him, as it turned out, someone else had already solved this problem. Back in 2021, the legend himself, Zero Master, released a tool-assisted speedrun of Okuplok, and in that task, Zero Master performed 2 very precise skips that allowed the ends of the corridor to remain open. Basically, he skipped the triggers that caused the ends to close, and this allowed him to hide in a small nook that would normally be inaccessible. With this strategy, the fight would theoretically be trivial to survive, as the main problem of needing to avoid Revenant rockets was completely neutralized. In practice, however, the skips are incredibly precise, requiring 2 sub-pixel perfect angles. Coincident spent multiple days brute forcing to find a human viable setup, which he ultimately did manage to find, though this didn't make things 100% solved, as even performing the skips did require a couple of perfect inputs to execute, and because this skip needs to be performed several hours into a run, the pressure is extremely high. Any mistake at all and the run would be over.
I need to calm down, No! I can't feel it. Am I right? Is this right?
With the Revenant Snake now feasible to beat consistently, Coincident began attempts to complete the entire map without the use of saves. However, he would do this on the I'm Too Young to Die difficulty setting. On this easier setting, not only do you receive double the amount of ammo as you do on Ultraviolence, but you also only take half the amount of damage. This makes an enormous impact on the survivability of the map, though it doesn't make it easy by any means. And even getting through the entire map on this difficulty would have been unthinkable before Coincident showed that it was possible. And in April of 2023, Coincident would be successful on his mission. He became the first person to beat Okuplok without dying a single time.
That is Okuplok from start to finish. No deaths, no saves, no shenanigans, no nothing. But it's I'm Too Young to Die, of course, and I would never fucking do this on Ultraviolence. GG. Oh, fuck. It's over.
And as Coincident finished the map on I'm Too Young to Die, he proclaimed that he would never do it on Ultraviolence. Though over the following year, Coincident's attitude would slowly change. As he continued to develop better strategies for each encounter, the possibility of a full run on Ultraviolence became more and more realistic. By April of 2024, a full year after he beat Okuplok on I'm Too Young to Die, he managed to beat it with only 3 saves on Ultraviolence, and a month later in May, he had a run that was over 5 hours deep. He had reached a very complex section that requires you to first clear out small pockets of archviles, while an army of cacodemons shoots fireballs from behind. You need to be very quick, as another army of Hell Knights are encroaching on your position fast, blocking any chance of escape. So the idea is to clear out as many sections of archviles as possible to give you enough distance and time to kill as many Hell Knights as needed to clear a path out.
Okay, time to cross my fingers and pray that this was enough. Shit. I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm just dead.
Though unfortunately in this instance, Coincident didn't manage to kill enough Hell Knights, and was ultimately swarmed. After this death, Coincident will go back to the drawing board and alter his strategy, changing it from mostly using the corridor to avoid fireballs to a strategy making more use of the small rooms on the side instead, which counterintuitively slows the progression of the Hell Knights down, as their pathing would cause them to go into the side rooms as well.
Let's go.
Coincident would then return, using this checkpoint to set a new personal best, beating Okuplok on Ultraviolence using only a single save. Coincident's progress would then continue. In late May 2024, he would set a new PB, making it 5.5 hours into the map.
No, I was on the Mega! The Mega was there! The Mega was right there!
After this, it wouldn't be until almost a full year later that Coincident would beat this mark. In March of 2025, he had a run that was a full 6 hours in, making it further through the map than ever before.
No! Oh my god, no!
At this point, it seemed like it was only a matter of time, and on the 20th of April 2025, Coincident would achieve this run.
Okay, there's a tunnel, okay. No, I got all the items. I got everything, all the kills, all the secrets, all the items, all the Okuplok. We've got all the Okuplok. Am I dreaming? Yeah, I got all the kills I can do. Face rocket ending. Yes! Fuck yes! Okuplok is done! 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 Done!
Coincident's UV max run of Okuplok is truly astounding, and clocks in at just over 6 hours. Considering just how intense the battles are, this is nothing short of a marathon. A mere 2 years earlier, a run like this would have been deemed as simply impossible. Personally, I still don't even see how it was done. I wouldn't have the skills or the nerve to survive for that long, nor would I have the tenacity to spend years developing the necessary strategies. I couldn't even get past the first fight. It felt completely futile. If you know how, I recommend you go and download the Okuplok Slaughter map and give it a try. If for no other reason, then it will allow you to better appreciate Coincident's run, because I can assure you, he makes it look much easier than it really is. When I reached out to Coincident to talk about his run, he told me something interesting. He said that I was the reason he started speedrunning Doom. And sure enough, when you go to his channel, the very first Doom speedrun he ever uploaded was to take part in a competition I was holding, all the way back at the start of 2020, more than 5 years ago. Not only is that just totally awesome, but it also made me realize how much more of a positive impact I could be having. So I'm planning to host many more speedrunning competitions in the very near future. Keep a lookout for those soon. In the meantime, go and check out Coincident's full run and also follow him on Twitch, where he regularly streams Doom. I will put both links in the description. Thanks for watching, you legends. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video.